Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Us, a show dedicated to bringing real help to real couples. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
What's up, guys? My name is Seth Studley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and together we are high-performance marriage coaches.
We are cutting through the bullcrap and creating a movement of happy, healthy, badass couples all over the world.
Let's go!
Welcome to the series. We are here. What is the name of our series? Do you remember?
Anatomy of Redemption.
So we are here in Tacoma. You saw some B-roll of us driving in. We're taking our kids skating at Alchemy Skate Park, and I thought it would be the perfect time for us to get in our car and record a podcast like normal people do about our journey with faith in our marriage, our church like family falling apart,
church community
with Mars Hill. And all of that. What sort of thoughts do you want to add?
A lot of this is about our own spirituality, Christianity, the way that we got connected deeply to a church out here in Seattle, talking about the community that we built there, the impact that the church had on our marriage, on our kids' lives, and which was a positive impact. The people we met, the counselors that we worked with during some of the worst times in our marriage and our lives, and then also the other side of that. As you guys know, Mars Hill Church out in Seattle was around for, I think, like 15 or so years. Then it all ended, and
that was our church.
And that was our main church.
That was our community.
That was our community. We did worship music there. We did all kinds of stuff there, and it was a really, really deep part of who we were, a deep part of what the church was in our marriage, and it was a real family. And then that whole thing imploded. So we're gonna talk about that, walk you guys through how important it was for us, how we changed, how we grew, and then the other side of that when it imploded, and then I don't know, like 5 or 6 years post of the church imploding, and what I thought about spirituality, about God, what Melanie thought about spirituality and God, and now our full circle kind of progress, I guess, if you want to call it that, right?
Yeah. So I want to start with
so this is kind of cool because our very first podcast released, I don't know, 6 years ago to the day, actually, 6 years ago to the day, was recorded on an iPhone in a car. I was sitting here, Melanie was sitting there. And
not in this car, though.
Not in this car. We've upgraded since then. And it was one of the realest conversations we've had, and we're intending this to be another real conversation because we have been at a different moment in our marriage, in our lives, individually, and we're reforging all of that. Like, so I think it's kind of cool. It's like we're using a lot of the same equipment that we used in the very early days of our marriage, except we're not on an iPhone.
And if you haven't heard season 1, there's 13 episodes. Season 1's really, really cool. But I wanted to start with sharing the background of our actual individual faith experiences. Like, when did you become a Christian? Were you raised in the church? All of that kind of stuff. And I will say we are literally sitting in a parking garage or a parking lot in Tacoma, so we may be interrupted and the sun is going to set and it's going to get dark, so whatever, get over it.
If we're interrupted and you hear gunshots, you know what happened. So
but so tell everybody about your experience with religion pre-me.
Pre-me?
Pre-me.
So I was born premature and found God. No, I grew up in the South, and in the
Where
South, specifically in South Carolina, a small town called Greer, Blue Ridge, South Carolina, and that's the Bible Belt. That's the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. And I specifically grew up in a Church of God where people ran the aisles, they spoke in tongues, they did healing, all kinds of stuff, and sometimes it would get crazy. And that's just how I grew up, right? It was never, we'll be going to church. It was, this is what you do. This is what you do. This is a part of your life, basically.
What's your microphone doing?
Sorry. This is a part of your life, basically, no matter what. And that was it's what you were steeped in. Like a tea bag steeping in water, that's just what it was. And for that, came probably a skewed view of God, right? Just like, okay, this is what you do. People get saved and then resaved and saved and resaved, but all the while they're going to church on Sundays and then doing kind of crazy stuff, on the weekends.
What's kind of crazy stuff?
Oh, just drinking, sex, drugs, whatever. But then you go back to church on Sunday and say, oh, I'm forgiven, I rededicate my life. Some of your listeners know exactly what I'm talking about. And if other listeners don't, that's fine. That's just what the experience was. And part of the reason for this podcast is because it's like I've had a new, a new awakening kind of. I was telling Melanie and some friends, it's like I've seen a different color for the first time. And so it's an experience of God that was not really similar to what I grew up with, and not even what I was experiencing when we were in Mars Hill. So that's how I grew up. Like, I don't know. It's very black and white. Are you saved or are you not saved, right? If you died right now, are you going to hell or heaven? What's your choice? And then, man, and as a kid, you're like, it scares the hell out of you, literally. And then you go, okay, I'll do whatever. I don't want to like burn, with devils forever. And you're like, 8, 9, 10, 11. You don't know. You don't know what's going on. So it was a lot of fear-based, a lot of do this or you will X, Y, Z, right? If you don't, then bad stuff will happen kind of thing. And so that was never real to me. It was real to me as a kid, but like as I'm growing older and matured, it's like, what does that even mean? That I don't get it, right? So that's my experience with growing up in the church and faith, Christianity specifically. What about you?
Well, did you think that faith would be a part of your marriage? Like, did you think about it at all? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, absolutely. And that goes back to the culture that you're steeped in. It's like, oh yeah, I'll marry a woman. She'll be a Christian and we'll go to church on Sundays, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that's just what I thought. Mm-hmm. Just like, oh yeah, the person you marry, you're gonna have kids.
What is your cord doing?
I don't know.
So mad right now.
Okay.
I ate McDonald's on the way here, and I just burped at McDonald's.
Gross.
Were you gonna say more? Or can I go to mine?
No, full expectation of, you get married, of course we're going to church. Don't be a weirdo.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Of course we're going to church. Don't be a weirdo.
Right.
I grew up in Seattle area, south of Seattle in Maple Valley / Hobart / Issaquah.
Sin den.
I don't know what that means. Did you say sin den? Like
den.
a den of sin?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. But that's the area that I grew up in. We grew up going to St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Issaquah. We were part of the Catholic Church forever. All I remember about the Catholic Church was it being so freaking boring.
Right.
Like, I don't remember anything they talked about really at all.
Was Mass important to you, or the Eucharist, or whatever that is?
I don't even know what that is.
Mass?
I don't know what the Eucharist is. You think I know what that is? I don't know what that is. You're Christ? You're Christ.
So I guess that's so you weren't very participatory in the Catholic faith then.
I zero knew.
Okay,
I mean, that is not a reflection of my parents not teaching me that,
right?
Or the church not being good. That's a reflection of me not listening or caring.
I see.
So growing up in the Catholic Church, I would say the things I really liked about it were that we gave a lot. Like, we volunteered our time. We helped at this, like, after service, you give out donuts and you do coffee for old people at the tables.
You helped out old people and gave them food and did services.
Yeah, like we did stuff at the church. We volunteered there all the time. My mom would decorate it. We would do flowers at it. So we got to like go to the church all the time when it wasn't church time, which was the funnest part.
Did you enjoy that? Did you find a sense of community around that?
Yeah, that was super fun. Like, I got to be with my mom all the time and my brothers and sisters and just like move stuff and then be like afraid of the scary church places where you're like, oh, that's like a church closet. Oh,
church at night. You ever been to church at night?
Yes.
Nobody. Oh.
But Catholic church at night is even different. Differenter. But I mean, we didn't talk about like religion really, and I grew up in a home where as although we were like religiously Catholic, like that's the religion we were.
Yeah.
We talked about theology all the time, but like my dad would listen to Joseph Campbell and who's that guy in the wheelchair I was just talking about?
Stephen
Hawking, and like he would talk about the universe and black holes and the transcendency to the transparency. Nope, said it backwards. The transparency to transcendency, which is
Universe
a Joseph
juice.
Campbell thing. So we grew up going to a Catholic church, but sort of being like, church is a little bit silly. People, if you're mean to someone, that's not right. Doesn't matter what religion you are. So I didn't have a huge emphasis on Jesus. Didn't really mean much.
You never thought, very, very unlike the way that I grew up, oh, heaven or hell, I better make a decision tonight because if I get in a car crash, I'm really screwed.
No.
Never.
No. And no one talked to me that way about it.
Right.
But again, the Catholic Church isn't like, what is the Eucharist? Nobody knows what that is. Not even the person who made it up. And so they don't speak like a regular Christian group would be like, you're going to go to hell. It would be like, thou shalt burn in thine fire of thine will. Like, nothing makes sense anyway. So who even knows? But that was how I was raised. People are fine. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you're religious. Like, you love people and you be nice. But then when I was 19, actually 20 years ago, it was on Thanksgiving, 20 years ago.
Wow.
What's the day today? What day is it?
December 3rd.
Literally 20 years ago, yesterday was when I got that little black Bible.
Wow.
That, you know what I'm talking about? The New Testament. It's 1202.
Did your old boyfriend give it to you?
Yes.
That's cool. It is cool. Good.
But anyway, I was dating a guy whose family was all Christian, and the dad would actually read the Bible to me, which I thought was really interesting. And he was just like super nice.
Was that something?
Dad.
Well, I have an idea, but that seems like it was something that was very, very, very different and new to you.
I mean, I don't know. He was just talking to me. He was just a nice dude that was talking to me.
Okay.
And so part of it was like, why is my microphone setting so low? Well, whatever. He was just nice, and he would talk about the Bible, and then so would the wife. And it was just fun. And then by chance, every single person I worked with at Starbucks, when I was, again, 18, 19 years old, Starbucks in Maple Valley by QFC. It's closed now, but if you've ever been there, that's where I worked.
That's where we met.
That's where we met. But I had, like, everyone that I was surrounded by was a Christian. Every employee there, like Leif and who else? I'm trying to think. Taylor.
Just all of them, right? So
Josh.
You had worked there, but did you know, or did you, like, once you became a Christian, did you, like, start talking to them about Christianity, or?
No, they talked about it, and they, like, a lot of them were really involved in churches and did youth group stuff. And so I just had this friend group and my boyfriend. They were all Christians and, like, super, super nice. And that was nothing like what the friend groups that I had in high school and growing up. They were all, like, stoners, like skaters and stoners and graffiti artists and theater kids. It was all just, everyone was like, and they're fine people, but, like, just race to the bottom. Like, how much vodka can you drink and how many people can you sleep with and, like, what kind of drugs can you do all at once? Like, and you go from that to, like, these people are like, I can pray for you if, like, do you want me to pray with you about this thing you're walking through? That must be really hard. And you're like, what?
How did you feel about that? Did you trust these new people? Like,
yeah, I just thought they were
pray?
super nice.
Like, pass the drugs. What are you talking about? Pray. Like,
No, I was never like that.
What was your interpretation of that, or tell me about it? Because it's a pretty big difference.
Well, actually, this makes me think of something we were talking about earlier. You and I were talking about this idea. You get mad at me that I'm, like, neutral about so many things, and I don't have really strong opinions about, like you think it's a flaw. This is going to sound weird for, like, a hot minute. I don't put a lot of stake in a lot of things. I don't really care what's going on most of the time. And I don't care what most people think about anything most of the time, which is what it is. But I didn't care that people were like, oh, I'll pray for you. I was like, okay, cool, fine. Or, oh, let's smoke some weed in this car over here. And I'm like, okay, fine. I don't know. Like, I didn't care one way or another. I don't judge much.
Interesting.
So what's interesting about that?
No, I knew that, but yeah.
But so that being said, that's why I didn't have any super strong opinions when they would be like, hey, I can pray for you or whatever. I was like, oh, that's nice. That's nicer than not. But anyway,
Okay.
So then I on Thanksgiving Day, became a Christian. It was literally like as if God just, like, kicked out my feet from underneath me.
How though?
It
what was the process?
Felt exactly like that.
Was it like
talking
oh,
to my
goodness.
boyfriend and was like, "What?" Oh, and just cried and cried and cried. And I was like, "I don't know what's
Why
going on."
did you cry?
Because it was like the Holy Spirit just did some crazy vibes.
You were moved by it in a way? Like were you different? I mean, this is like a conversion. Like, oh, I converted to Christianity because I had this
I don't know what
miracle
happened.
experience, or
I don't know why a miracle experience would be what I would even have. I don't understand it at all, and still don't get it. Didn't get it.
Did you
then,
resist it? Like, what is this? This is weird. This
No.
is uncomfortable. This is crazy.
No, because it was like you can't resist gravity. It's not like you can be like, oh, that thing happened. Nah, like there's no resisting it. It is and was so overwhelmingly like, well, this came out of nowhere.
You want me to put some Christianese on that?
Sure.
God was tugging at your heartstrings.
Oh, okay. Okay. But it was very much the opposite of how I was. And up until that point,
God was calling. You picked up.
Up until that point, I just didn't care about anything. Did drugs, slept with people, like didn't care. I wasn't a terrible person. I wasn't mean and bad and unkind, but I just didn't care about anything and did whatever I wanted.
You were terrible.
Because there was no consequences. Just FYI. I couldn't be out of my family group. There's nothing I could have done to like be disowned. So I was like, whatever. Might as well do whatever I want. Thank God I never got an STI or into an accident or overdosed or any crazy thing. I could have easily gotten to a lot of really, really terrible situations. And I say I said this in women's group coaching the other day, actually, and I say this all the time. Like, I feel like I would have been protected. 1,000,000% have been protected. Like, in all those stupid places that I put myself with people who didn't really care about me and not safe and not smart and on drugs and still was protected. And I don't know why. I don't necessarily even think that's fair or kind, but that sounds funny. But
fair or kind to you? Like,
I don't know.
You didn't deserve it,
no,
right?
Yeah, it's like unwarranted 100%. But anyway, so that is my experience with faith. Grew up Catholic, didn't really care, don't even know what the Eucharist is. Became a Christian proper at 19 with zero desire to become a Christian proper.
So then you started praying.
Yes, got
differently.
A little
you started
biblio.
You started
what?
You started, I think that's when you're in.
It might. No, it was I moved. It might have just been the cable.
You started reading scriptures. You started reading the Bible. You started talking to other people about Christianity and God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus and all this stuff. Right?
All of a sudden, all my coworkers made a lot more sense to me.
And you also, and I know this from talking to you, things that you previously liked, you didn't like anymore. Correct?
Yes.
It's like you liked this is an example. You liked a certain type of food, and then boom, the next day you're like, I can't eat that anymore. I don't want it. It doesn't taste good. I'm not interested in it. Right?
Yes. And so I think that transition paints how I have experienced faith versus how you experience faith, because it wasn't a scary, weird, like you're 6 years old and gnashing of teeth and weeping. It wasn't that. It was
that's sulfur, hellfire, brimstone.
It wasn't that. So I didn't have that experience of being, I didn't have any negative thoughts about faith or God or anything when I was little.
You weren't scared into it.
No.
Right?
No, not at all.
There was nothing scary. It was like beautiful.
Can you skip forward so your face is in the light more?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. The sun is setting and
how's that?
That's nice.
Okay,
really
so
nice.
you weren't scared, like coerced by fear into it. Like, you didn't have youth pastors asking you, where would you go right now if you died?
Right. Also, I mean, again, back to the point of like, I don't know. I guess I just don't really care what other. I don't know. A youth pastor asked me that, I'd be like, whatever. Whatever, dude. Like, I don't know.
Not in the South.
I don't know what that means, but I just don't care.
I don't know. And then they would ask you again, and every Wednesday at youth group, and every Sunday you would hear, and that'd be the message, and it would just be terrible. So yeah, your experience was very, very different from mine, and I think that like, if we're talking about your conversion experience at 19, it was, you weren't looking for it.
Right.
Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was asking you weird, messed up questions about what if you die, what happens, or all this stuff. And it was you chose, like, obviously God was working on your heart, and then boom, kind of hit you, and I think that's much more of a beautiful, in fact, that is what my recent experience has been like in the last several weeks and months. You know what I'm saying? But we'll get into that on other episodes.
Months, but
weeks then.
Days.
Not days. It's been weeks.
It's been a week.
It's not been 1 week.
It's been 1 week.
If I had crickets, you know what I would do right now. But anyway.
Just like if you had them in your pocket.
Right.
Squeak. And
okay.
But so all of that to set up, then we meet. You and I meet.
Mm-hmm.
So
at that
you
same Starbucks.
are at that point in 2001, 2002, 2003 area. You were in Emory. And you moved up from South Carolina to Seattle, Bellevue, and then Maple Valley. And you were in a Christian band that all the people that I worked with at Starbucks knew who you guys were because they were all Christians, right? So this funny, weird, like, confluence? I don't know, is that a word? Eucharist? This confluence of, like, I have all these Christian friends. They all know who the band Emory is. Emory all walks into Starbucks, and all of them have these thick Southern accents that no one has ever heard in Maple Valley, Washington, ever. And then we become coworkers and friends, and we were friends for a year. But again, this is the beginning of my journey of just having become a Christian. Did I have a shaved head when we met?
I think so.
Trying to figure out the timeline of that.
Yeah, you did. We weren't dating then. Your hair was growing out.
I had a shaved head.
Yeah, and so we worked together for a year. You talked about Christianity some. You knew that, we were Christian. And
what were your thoughts about how I talked about Christianity? I'd be curious to know that.
Nothing really. Just it was, you were like, oh, okay, this chick's a Christian. Cool. Like you're reading the Bible. Obviously, you got faith, hope, and love. You got saved on your arm. I was like, oh, she's...
You mean tattoos?
Tattoos, yeah. She's a Christian. Okay, cool. But you were a very different version of a Southern Christian lady.
What are your thoughts on that?
Or nothing really. I mean, it was refreshing to me because everything was new. Like we just moved 3,000 miles away from home. Everything was an adventure. Everything was new. Everything was like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's see what is around that next corner kind of thing. And then so fast forward a little bit, we worked together for a year at Starbucks, got to know each other. You really get to know someone when you wake up at 4 a.m. and work together. And you broke up with your boyfriend, and it was like instantly we started dating.
It's like literally 1 moment later.
It was weird.
Microsecond later.
But we kind of knew that we liked each other then, And church was a big part of our relationship. I remember we would go to church. I don't remember which one. I think just random churches in Maple Valley and stuff like that. So that
we went to City Church.
Oh, yeah, that's
remember?
right. Remember?
I think that was the first time I ever went to church with you.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember, I made you apple turnovers.
Yeah, I do. Thank you for that.
I remembered it first.
That's good. And oddly enough, you were on keto, and you would eat like bell peppers and cream cheese and ham slices on the way to City Church. And
Carl Buddig.
Gross.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
It's like the best ham
59
ever.
cents ham for half a pound is the worst.
It's like my whole childhood is that.
Yeah.
The best flavor
Probably
of ham.
A lot of childhoods.
So
and ramen.
good.
But anyway, and then I'll fast forward a little bit. Then we got married, and we dated for 5 months, got engaged, and then got married 3 months after that. So from starting to date, like first kiss time, to actual marriage kiss was about 8 months. It was like a literal 8 months, which is crazy. I think it was October 10th was our first date, and then we got married on August 7th. So that was pretty quick, right?
Mhm.
But Christianity, church, and the Bible was a big part of our marriage. I had no
So wait, hold on. Let's back up a tiny bit, because in that dating phase, in the 8 months that we dated, you toured a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then near the end of it, we started going to Mars Hill in Ballard.
Right.
Is that right? Ballard.
Yeah, that is right, because you were living in Olympia, Washington. You had an apartment. You were going to college there, and you were almost done with college. And then
Evergreen State Gooey Ducks.
That's right. We got married in August. And then I remember we would drive from Olympia all the way to Ballard in Seattle, which was like almost a 2-hour drive.
Well, hold on. I'm trying to get to our premarital counseling. I'm trying to talk about that.
Oh, I see.
Because we wanted to get married at Ballard, and we couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just because of the timeline. We wanted to get married like in August, and it was like, May or something. And they were like, oh, it's all booked out, whatever, and you need to do premarital counseling with Leaf Moy. And his premarital counseling was just the worst. Like, I could have licked the concrete of this parking lot and gotten better advice. Like, I don't think he said anything helpful.
But that's not an injunction on him. It was just I don't know.
I don't know what he was teaching us, but it wasn't anything.
But premarital counseling back in that day was all idiotic in the first place. Like, then we got premarital. No, we found a pastor.
Not all of it, but that.
No, seriously, all of it. It was just
bad.
like super lame. It was lame. It's like, what are we doing? Like, anyway.
Well, we did premarital counseling with Leaf Moy at Ballard. And then we ended up getting married using my sister's
Pastor Kev
in Ellensburg. And he was really hilarious. And he came out, we got married at the golf course right across from where we live right now. And it was super fun.
It turned into a church now, and that's where we go to church. Or just recently went last week for the first time in like 4 years.
Right.
So, and then, so Christianity, the Bible, Jesus, church was a big part of our marriage. There was never one single second that I had never thought that I wouldn't marry a Christian woman and we would go to church. Right. In fact, that was one of the like 6 things on my list of like, okay, what do I want in a woman that I marry? And of course, share the same faith it had to be number 1 on the list, right? So we would go to Mars Hill. This was around 2004. So Mars Hill was relatively new, and I had heard about Mars Hill when I first moved out here. We heard, oh man, it's a cool church. It's got a Seattle vibe. Like, the music that they play is like no other music that I've ever heard. And of course, being a musician in a band, music was something very important to me. And I was like, whoa, this is sick. Like, they're actually really good musicians. It wasn't just like a 40 or 50-year-old dude up there playing the piano and like singing vibrato stuff. Yeah, and that's what I grew up with.
Yeah, I want to comment on that, because I grew up in the Catholic Church. We eventually stopped going to St. Joseph's and started going to St. James Cathedral in Seattle, and I joined the like cathedral choir. So I grew up listening to classical music, like the best music that there is, and from it's orchestral, it's operatic, it's all the things, like with huge pipe organs. So my perception of what church should be like, the music should be good. Like, it shouldn't just be this dumb, someone with an acoustic guitar, someone who can hardly sing. And so going to Mars Hill in Ballard and having the ambiance feel really cool. Like, I remember that it had those huge black lights. Do you remember those big, giant, black, like, they hung from the ceiling. They were enormous, like black lampshady things.
It was a complete vibe. It was, I just remember loving it. Like, absolutely
it had candles and it was dark and it was beautiful. And the music was so good. It wasn't, there was just so many things about it that were so different from anything that I had experienced going to all these different churches. And it didn't have that like Christianese dorky, like, we love you, Lord, we praise you in the name of the Lord. Like, it didn't have that.
No, it didn't. It had like
Pastor Bobby
bands with band names, and the cool thing was,
Gospel Copter.
Just all kinds of names. And the cool thing was, because they were actual musicians. Yeah. Like I remember when I was touring, we played with some of the musicians that were playing on stage on Sunday, and they like had rewritten old hymns and stuff, and like put distorted guitar and just crazy stuff in it. It was like, this is awesome. And it was worshipful. It was
like nothing else out there at all.
It
like
was
literally
moving,
at all.
Yeah. And then like back then I respected Pastor Mark Driscoll, and grew, and like I learned a lot, and that really helped me go, oh, okay, what is church? What is God? What is marriage? What is this? Like, obviously, if you guys know anything about Mark Driscoll, maybe I shouldn't even call him a pastor, honestly.
Mark he Driscoll is a pastor.
Well, really pushed men to step up and break away from whatever narrative, like, a wuss of a guy kind of thing. And obviously, me, like thousands upon thousands of other young married men were like, yes, let's do this. Okay, I can. I see what can be different. And maybe this was different from my family of origin or how I grew up. And it was very like, hell yeah. Yep, let's go. Right? And that is one way, which I'll be super honest, that was one way that was really beneficial to me in the early days of our marriage and all those times, right?
Yeah, and I think too, when I look at the timeline of everything, we immediately, after getting married and going to Ballard regularly, we moved back up to Maple Valley a few months later. And we immediately were like, how can we get involved? Like, we wanted to just get involved somehow. And we knew probably music would be the best way to do it because Seth was a drummer and I was a singer, right? And so we were like, let's figure out how we can get involved. And I remember the Sunday. Do you remember the Sunday?
I do.
When they said what? What'd they say?
They said they had brought up this great guy, super nice dude, Pastor Paul from Aletheia Church. Paul Dean in Issaquah Highlands. And
the great Paul Dini.
The great Paul Dini. Pastor Paul was on stage with Mark Driscoll, and he said, hey, I'm starting a new church as part of the Acts 29, which was a thing that Mars Hill did, and it's going to be in Issaquah, and we need a drummer and a singer. And I looked at Melanie, and we looked at each other, and it was like,
sign us up.
Okay, I'm a drummer, she's a singer, let's go. And so went to Mars Hill for about 2 years. And then we left Mars Hill to go to Aletheia, which was closer to our house, and it was a brand new church, and that was
super fun. It was
was super fun. So we played music there every single Sunday for about
like a million years.
A year and a half. No Sundays, literally, like no Sundays off. Right? There weren't other bands. So either
was there not?
Maybe a little bit after that, but either like I was the drummer for those bands, or you were the singer, or the side singer, or whatever, right? And you played other instruments too. So, and we built a real cool community there.
Yeah,
and we did
some
that
of
for
our
a long
like
time.
longest friends are from Aletheia.
Yeah,
but again, Aletheia was an Acts 29 church, and we would go to Mars Hill sometimes too, as well. But we were serving at Aletheia, like as the way that we could serve the larger church or whatever. And that was so much fun. And it was tiny. It was the complete opposite of Mars Hill. It was tiny. It was up in the Issaquah Highlands where everyone's got gajillions of dollars. It was, it
wasn't moody. It wasn't dark.
No, it was the complete opposite. But it was like, we're going to serve God and do what we can do. And that's where we went. And we went and faithfully practiced and did everything. And again, some of our longest friendships in the church are from there.
And that was really good, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Fast forward a year and a half. We had one of our kids there, which was great. The church family supported us. There was a time where we had our car broken into at Cedar River out in Maple Valley, and a lot of my drum gear, for some reason, was in my Land Cruiser, and we drove that to the river that day, and our phones, and again, for some idiotic reason, our passports and our full wallets were in the car, and let's see, some other stuff like climbing and hiking gear. It's like my car was my storage unit for all the fun things that I did, and our car got broken into, and it was terrible. And I remember Aletheia gave us money, and I looked down at the check, and it was like, oh, cool, $100. And then I noticed there's another zero on that, and I was just in shock.
Yeah.
This is like 2005 or 6 or something, and like $1,000 was a crap ton of money, right? And I was in grad school, so we were poor at the time. So I was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I was able to go and rebuy a bunch of my old drum stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a real sense of community there, and we did a lot of growth, and that was great. And we're telling you all this because this just illustrates how important the church and Christianity was in our marriage at the time.
And I do want to say as well, like Alethea followed a bunch of Mark's teachings still because it was Acts 29. So there would be things that it would be like a sermon series or like a book, and we would learn it and read it and watch it or listen to it, or the women would talk about it in community groups. So there was more than just Sunday. And I mean, obviously, if we're leading worship, that's a lot more than just Sunday. That's rehearsals. That's getting there early, staying late, setting up chairs. Like there's a lot. And then you're with this community of believers all the time. But on top of that, we did community groups, and the community groups, our kids became friends with each other, and we would go through books together. And so this really was like a not permanently, that's not what I meant to say, a pretty solid staple in everything that we did.
I remember
as a couple.
We would have movie nights with some of our friends from the church.
We would watch Pirates of the Caribbean.
And I just remember that was such a different time in our marriage.
Yeah.
Go have a movie night at your friend's house, like eat some dinner, and then spend hours and hours and get cozy on their couch or our couch and watch movies. And that was just so cool.
Hey guys, we hope that you are absolutely loving Anatomy of Redemption, and we thought it would be helpful to share some tools that are free for you if you want to bring prayer back into your marriage or you've never had it there before. And basically, we made a resource for you guys that we wish we had when we were walking through all of this stuff. So if you go to anatomyofus.com/prayer, you can get a free PDF download and watch a quick video of how to do it. And again, we're just sharing this because it's something that we wish we had as we've been walking through this journey.
So go to anatomyofus.com/prayer to get this resource to increase your prayer life, to give you a head start. Again, it's what we wish we had when we were going through all this stuff, and we know that it will be helpful for you.
All right, enjoy, and back to the show.
Bye. So we're saying this because it wasn't just like, oh, go to church on Sundays or something like that. It was our life. You know what I'm saying?
It was
of course,
all
we
of
had
our
work lives.
It was pretty much all of our friendships. I mean, I don't think I had any friends outside of the church. Did I?
Maybe
Other
a
than
handful
family.
from Starbucks and stuff like that.
But most of those were church folks. So, I mean, even then, they weren't our church folks, but they were,
Church
new,
folks.
not new community, real young life, real community. I don't know.
Right.
So basically everyone that we were with all of the time was from the church, whether that was, Mars Hill and Ballard or Alethea or a different church in Maple Valley, but that larger church family was our entire community except for who you worked with. Right. And so then we were serving the church. We served with Alethea, and I can't remember why we decided to.
Well, it was just time for us
leave.
to go back to Mars Hill because I think there were some other opportunities to do music there. And
I think it was maybe with Matt. Maybe Matt asked me. There was a reason that we left, but I can't remember what it was. It wasn't any bad reason. It was just like, oh, we've done this for a while. Let's do something new. And at that point, we had Mariner already. We had Tough. This is funny to think of. But yeah, we went. I started. I think it was Matt asked me to do music, or I asked him. I honestly can't remember, but because Matt in Emory did music at Ballard, and I think he asked me because I don't think I would have asked him.
No, that was later. And here's the timeline. So we had gotten news that Mars Hill was opening a new campus in
Bellevue. That's why.
Eastside
That's what
Christian
it was.
School, and they needed musicians for bands, and we're like, okay, I think we're feeling called to go back over there.
So a bunch of us went from Alethea to there.
So we helped kick off Mars Hill Bellevue campus, which when it was at the smaller
when it was
campus.
At a school. It was at school.
Right. And so we continued to do music there. And they had like multiple services. So when we did music there on Sundays, literally it'd be like a 6 to 7 p.m., like 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. all day long, right? All day long. And that's when we really started to build more community with other musicians because we're spending 12 hours every single week apart, and also rehearsals. So,
and that was fun because that was like all of our friends were in the bands. My brother was in the band, right? So Jesse played guitar or bass or whatever he played. I don't remember. And then we had, Eli and Katie. I mean, these were literally all of our friends that we've had for years. Jason.
Yeah.
Everybody. And then when we went to Bellevue Christian campus for Bellevue Mars Hill, that expanded our friend group even more. So then you start knowing the sound guy who does, what was his name? He's so funny. Like the front of house person and the greeters. And then you have people who would do like childcare. So your circle of friends, our circle of friends just got bigger because the church that we started serving every week got bigger,
Right.
So
and then we were tithing. We were part of a bigger thing. And then also we did these things called, just community groups, right? So you meet locally out in Maple Valley, and they had hundreds of them all throughout Mars Hill.
Which was really cool because even though we were going to church in Bellevue or Ballard or wherever, our community group was for Maple Valley. So we still have friends that we see. I just saw last week people we met in at Mars Hill Bellevue. They go to New Community.
Cool.
You know them.
Okay. Right on. So again, keep in mind like the narrative that we're creating. We were always doing music. We were always praying. We were always hearing sermons, and we had real community even outside of church, right? So this was we weren't an island. These were part of, these people were part of our lives, right? And we were also people... Got to edit that out. I don't know. Also part of other people's lives too. And so we did that for, we literally have gone to Mars Hill since like 2002, right? And Mars Hill imploded on 2016, correct?
15.
I think it's 16.
15.
You sure it's 15?
I think so. I don't know.
Anyway, we went there for a very long time. And to talk about another way that the church and the people in the church helped us very, very much was when our marriage went through some really, really hard times, right?
And that was at Bellevue Christian campus when Tuff was born, our second son. And I was still leading worship. Like I was still doing singing and stuff. And we were just like, we were in everything all the time and had little kids and would take our kids there and all this stuff. And we went through essentially the thing that started this entire podcast, right? So Seth confessed to lying and looking at pornography. I fell apart. I gave him a black eye. It was just like an S show royale with cheese. Go
back and listen to season 1.
Yeah, listen to the first 13 episodes if you don't know that story.
And that'll give you a real context.
Yeah, and if you want to have like just the episodes, you can get them at anatomyofus.com under podcasts. You'll see season 1. So we curated them there for you. And season 1 even has a workbook, y'all. It's a big deal. So anyway, we went through that when we were at Mars Hill Bellevue at the Christian school. And we were trying to go to counseling. We had one really dukeified counselor. Really dukeified.
So there was a network of pastoral care counselors, right? And a lot of the pastors were very well-meaning, but they weren't trained clinically. So I'm a licensed therapist, and maybe
they weren't,
right? But there was one licensed mental health counselor who was also a pastor at this campus. His name was Pastor Alex
Gioni,
and he was really good. He was really good. He was a guy, and I've said this before on podcast a ton of times. There's been a handful of times where men who I have respected looked me straight in the eye and said, "What are you doing? What the hell are you doing?" And men need that. Believe it or not, men need that. They need to be pushed. They need to be tested. They need to be believed in, and they need to be given the opportunity to show their worth, to show their valor, right? And Alex, Pastor Alex, called me up to that, right? And he was a very integral person in our healing and our growth. So that was another thing that Mars Hill did that was good, right? The community, the call to action on a different level that I had known and thousands of other men had known, and women
and
too.
the call to accountability, I think.
Yeah,
too.
and the call to accountability and the call to like, okay, what are you doing? Do this right. I don't care if it's hard. You can do it. And that was really important in my growth there. And so, okay, we slowly worked through all that stuff. And again, if you go to season 1, this is like a 2-year process of healing, of reconciliation, of repair, and then rebuilding stuff. Right?
From that initial,
from that initial black eye and
Right.
everything that happened after that. Again, go back to season 1. It's a good story. And
but
so,
yeah, but like Mars Hill walked with us on that journey. Like that was a big part of it. It was that was our community while we were going through all of that healing process, and was a big deal. It's not an insignificant thing.
No,
you know?
very, like I said at the beginning, the church was a very big deal in our lives, in our marriage, right? And so we.
Oh, and sorry, and at that time when we went through the hardest parts of our journey, one of the things that Seth did completely by himself was decided, like, this is so hard. We have, like, he and I are so broken in how we were responding to this situation, of how I responded and gave him a black eye and what are we doing? And we just felt like we were going crazy. And so one of the things he started doing as like this is how we can save our marriage, is he'd set prayer alarms, and he prayed 6 times a day for every single day for like 2 years. And so
let me tell you the reason behind that. And this is all in season 1. But there was one night where things got really, really bad. This was after the black eye, and things got really, really bad. And Melanie, like, I think, I don't know, threw things or hit me with books and stuff like that, and then like scratched my back. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. And I thought she was going to literally kill me. The episode that we recorded was Hide the Guns, right? I thought she was going to kill me or kill herself or stab me while I was sleeping. So I locked myself in one of the spare bedrooms, put the couch in front of the door, and like just slept on the floor. And I was on my knees. She was like yelling on the other side, and I was on my knees praying, like, everything that I have done has not worked. God, it is not my own understanding, but yours. And it was like a very, very truest and realist moment, one of the realest moments in my life, that I said to myself, and I knew it was me because I could hear my own voice saying it.
that was a weird sentence. Keep on.
I heard that somewhere. Seth, you don't know what to do. Lean not on your own understanding, but God's, right? And I was like, there's nothing. I know nothing. I can't do anything without you, God. Please help. And I got the idea. God gave me the idea. Okay, start praying. You cannot go wrong with prayer. And if Melanie says anything about praying, then that only reflects her
idiocy.
Well, I didn't want to say that. Like, and it was like one of the truest things that I knew. I'm like, okay, this, no matter if she hates it, loves it, cusses me out, or whatever, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do, no matter what anybody else in the world says. It's like, okay, it is right and just in any culture, in any land, in any time to like help an old lady across the street or something, right? No matter if people are making fun, it's like, okay, then they're messed up, right? And there was an assurity that I had in that, and a confidence that I had in that is like, I'm choosing to do the right thing because everything else I've done didn't work, and I know this to be true. And it was very awesome to know and experience the power of that, no matter what Melanie said or didn't say, right? So pray in the morning, pray again at 9 a.m., pray again at 12, pray again at 3, pray at 6, pray at bedtime. So that's 6 times, 6 times a day of prayer. No matter what, no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing, I did it. And that, I believe, is what saved our marriage. Like, I really believe that, because it wasn't God, it was God working through me, and like the direct connection that we had to God. And here's an important thing, and I don't know where you guys are, but it's where we are. me leading it.
Mm-hmm.
If Melanie had called me or texted me like I had called her for a year and a half, 2 years at these certain times, if she had led it, it wouldn't have had the same impact, right? Do you believe that?
Yeah. And I don't think it has anything to do with like me being smart or not, or any of the things that people could like infer from that. Like, oh, what? Melanie's not good enough, or she's not smart enough, or a woman can't, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't what I am even thinking. I believe that men are supposed to lead. Like, I believe that. And if
in a divine order of things, like you talk about.
And like even if, and I could do it, I could lead it. Of course I could. But I just don't think, and in a way I think it's how we're wired. It's how men are wired. It's how women are wired. And that doesn't diminish it. It's like.
It highlights the order of the, so.
It highlights that's how we are designed. And it is not a demoralizing, diminishing, demeaning anything about women, but I don't know. But it wouldn't have worked.
The same to you.
No.
If you let it.
It wouldn't have meant anything to me if I had let it. And that's the thing. I think I want to side note that and like kind of put a pin in that. That's what happens when men back down from leadership in their marriage, is that the wife by default goes, well, someone's got to lead this. Like there's a lot of stuff to do. Someone has to take the lead here. So then women start to take the lead. The wives start to take the lead. And then guess what happens? It falls apart because that's not what men want. It's not what women want. And so it just doesn't work. It can function that way for a while, but it is like limping at that point. And I'm saying that to empower men to lead and women to let their husbands lead. And men, be good leaders. Don't be like idiot leaders. And women, be kind about it. If your husband's not leading, don't just throw them under the bus and be like, you're the worst, you know? But yeah, I think I know that you needed to have been the one to lead that. And you did lead it. But again, we're sort of reiterating that this is, when we talk about redemption in marriage and having God in our lives, like we're showing you where we started. We're showing you what, like we at one point were praying 6 times a day and we're doing worship every single Sunday for years. And we haven't even gotten into sort of like the second half of our life at Mars Hill yet. But at that time, that was our whole world, was faith and God and Jesus and Christian community and being in the Word and going to community groups and listening to sermons and getting the books and reading the books together and talking about them with our friends. So it is fully the world that we were in for such a long time. It
was like gathering information we read books all the time, gathering information, growing our knowledge of God, spirituality, who we were in Christianity, and like building ourselves up, you know? And again, it wasn't like Bible thumping it was a system that worked well for us. Now, Mars Hill, of course, if you know anything about Mars Hill, had its stupid stuff, like super goofy stuff, right? And a lot of that we bought into, but sustainability of that didn't work. But what we're saying is, okay, we're on the same page. We have a shared vision of where we want our family to be spiritually, emotionally, physically, and I was taking the lead on that. And when men take the lead on stuff like that, women feel safe, they feel secure, and they feel taken care of and special, right? And guys need, what does John Eldridge say? They need like a beauty to rescue, something to fight, and a something else. I can't.
Dragon to fight.
A dragon to fight. I can't remember it.
There's homeless people right here.
Well,
doing something to that car.
It's fine. No, they were getting out of that car.
Oh, okay.
And that is what we were doing, right? And it completely worked. We found it so impactful and helpful in our marriage, right? Yeah. And you were going to say something?
Well, and I was just going to say that I think this episode is really all about helping you see how deeply we valued church, how frequently we were going. It was multiple times a week that we were either going to rehearsal, participating in church, activities. Our kids did they were little, so it was like the childcare stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like all of our entire world was the church. And I guess I wanted to just highlight that in this first episode, give you guys a background or like our sort of the history of where we started with our own walks with faith, and then what it looked like at Mars Hill, how deeply we were involved in it, because that wasn't the case. That hasn't been the case for the last 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know where we started, where we are right now doesn't feel very impactful. And so that's why I wanted to spend this whole time just talking through like what this setup to this looked like. And in the next episode, we are going to talk about the next 5 years pretty much of our Mars Hill experience, where it was like Bellevue proper in the same, it was on stage with Mark Driscoll practically every Sunday. It was music with Dustin Kinsrew. It was when everything started really ramping up and Mars Hill started really becoming a lot more popular, and like a
Easter
real Sunday at Safeco Field, that kind of stuff. It switched.
Which Safeco Field is where the Seahawks play, right? So this
Mm-hmm.
was not a small
The
kind
Mariners.
of community church. No,
it?
it was at the Seahawks
Stadium. Some stadium in Washington that does not have a cover on it, which makes
Seattle.
no sense.
And it was like, oh, this is really big.
Mm-hmm.
This is really famous. It was a mega church. And Melanie, I had gotten out of playing drums, and Melanie had continued like, now she's on stage literally in front of thousands of people every single Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was ramping up in a way that's still, we thought it was really cool. And it's like, okay, we're a part of something bigger. But in the back of our minds, we're like, oh, wait, that's what's going on?
There were things happening, but we'll
weird.
get that into get into that in the next episode. We need to move because we don't see light very well on our faces, and we need to go refresh Tufts skating
That's right.
thing at Alchemy Skate Park. So we will be back with another episode in just a bit here, and we're going to talk more about our journey at Mars Hill and all of it. So
All right. Stay
See
tuned.
you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Anatomy of Us. This podcast is produced by my mom, Melanie Studley, and hosted by my dad, Seth Studley. Our show is edited and published by our producer, Reva Hansen, from Creative Media Support. Special thanks to our Patreon members that get an extra episode every week. Thanks for watching. Love you. Bye.